Good afternoon. This is Sarah Honeydew with JNS Biblical Productions, April 2nd, 2015. We found a real Good Samaritan as described by Jesus in Luke chapter 10, which really proves there are good people out there who do kind, compassionate things to help complete strangers and perhaps save their lives. We've picked this one to illustrate true stories illustrating parables because it has a special twist at the end that also showed that God sometimes rewards people who do good things to others. Please welcome to JNS Biblical Productions, Mrs. Sandra Seth McDonald. Hi. Nice to meet you. Sandra, what is this story that you were so anxious to volunteer to our series on parables from the Bible?
So, Miss Honeydew, I'm so excited to be here. This is a story of a lifetime, and I was about ready to run over here just to tell this story. I'm so excited about it. I work for a construction company. I'm a demolition worker, and I was in a neighborhood. The company's name is D&LP Construction. We were working in a neighborhood, and there'd been a storm, and there's trees and debris everywhere. So I was in my bobcat, and I was removing trees. And I was just about to go on my lunch break when I saw what looked like a doll, like laying face down, submerged in muddy water in a ditch. And then I went a little closer, and I realized it was a man, and his clothes were all torn, and he looked like he'd been attacked or something.
That is really scary. So what could you do then?
Well, my first reaction is, well, God, I have to see if this guy's alive. So I jumped out of my bobcat, and I had a bottle of water laying in the seat. So I grabbed the water, considering if he was alive, he probably was, really thirsty. So I ran over there, and he was barely breathing. And I propped him up, and I helped him drink some water from the bottle. And then he had this huge gash, like down his face and the back of his neck, and he was bleeding profusely. And I didn't have a first aid kit, so I ended up ripping like a piece of my shirt off and tying it around the bandage to bandage his head. And I was trying to consider what to do. I mean, he was really heavy. I knew I couldn't lift him.
Wow, so did you call an ambulance right away?
No, because I'd left my cell phone at the office on the charger, so I had no way to get a hold of anyone. And I just knew I had to get help for this guy because he was bleeding to death. So it was like I got this, thought from heaven. I'd seen a building like 2 miles down the road, and it looked to be a hospital. So I got in my bobcat, and I went over to him, and I gently picked him up in the shovel of the bobcat, and I drove him down the road 2 miles. And the sign on the outside of the building was a worn out sign, and it said, Sisters of Charity Retreat Home.
So, wow, this is an incredible story. So is that the end?
No, that is actually just the beginning. So I pulled up, and they must have heard me because this bobcat is extremely loud. The muffler's horrible on it. So they all came running out. There's about 12 of them. And they took him, gently out of the shovel, and they just took off like they knew just what to do. And I felt kind of bad because I probably really didn't explain the story very well, what happened. But I was really concerned about getting back to work because I didn't want to get fired. I'm actually not really supposed to take the bobcat out for personal use. So I gave them like all the money I had, which ended up being like $2 and some change.
That's really a good story. Thank you, Sandra.
No, that's not the whole story. So I thought about this guy the entire time since the day I dropped him off, and I was concerned about him. So a week later, I tried to find the home in the Yellow Pages to see if I could call and see how he was doing, if he survived, if he was okay. And I couldn't find it. So I ended up getting up in my beat-up old truck, and I drove down there, and I came in, and there he was, Tom, that's his name. And he was sitting at this table and eating breakfast. They had him like a huge pile of waffles he was eating with bacon and eggs and sausage, and he was telling the nuns, what happened before the accident, and he was all cleaned up, and he had on like a royal blue shirt, and his hair was combed, and he recognized me as soon as he saw me, and his eyes went wide. And I won't go into any detail, but he had been a foreman for the lead mine, and he'd been laid off.
I have a feeling the story is going somewhere in particular.
Yes, well, 6 months later, we were married and had 5 years later, 3 beautiful children. So this is my husband, Tom, and this is our oldest daughter, Athena, and on the end is Emily. She's 3, and little Tom Jr. is 2. Now I get to see him every day. He is the foreman at the construction company that I work in, and we've lived happily ever after, and we ended up donating a sign to the Sisters of Charity, and they have renamed it the Good Samaritan Sisters of Charity Home.
Well, Sandra, your story is very impressive. God really thanked you by bestowing a husband and 3 kids. Jesus said in Luke 10:37, "Then said I unto him, Go and do likewise." This is Sarah Honeydew for JNS Biblical Productions saying good afternoon.